Welcome once again to another edition of Hometown Magazines. Again, for a second week, we're coming to you from the Buckham Fine Arts Gallery in downtown Flint, which is tonight the site of the final production of Helter Shelter, a final performance of this production of Helter Shelter, let's say, because I wouldn't be surprised if this is merely the first of many productions. With us here are many of the cast and some of the crew of this production, and those of you who tuned in last week met most of them, but we're going to meet at least one new one and get to talk to people in a little more depth. The one person I think I should introduce first who wasn't with us last week is Mary O'Sullivan. Mary is one of the professional actresses who is part of this production. Mary, can you tell us a little bit of how you came to be involved in this production?
Well, I was sitting minding my own business at home, and a friend of ours, Cheryl, who's also in the production, was over, and she started telling me and my husband David about the show and how she had been working on it with her friend Betty, who's the playwright. And she said, "Oh, I'm going off to Flint for weeks." And we said, "Well, have a good time and enjoy Flint." And then a few days later, or a week or so, she came back to us again and said something about, "Well, this play is really going to happen this summer. We're getting it together, and gosh, I bet you guys would love to come to Flint, wouldn't you?" And we sort of looked at each other and we said, "Well, we'll think about that." And we just kept talking to her about it, and pretty soon we were making plans and getting our lives organized to be able to leave Los Angeles for 6 weeks and come out here and do this. And we had a couple of phone conversations with Betty and learned some more about the play, and we just said, "Okay, yes, we're in."
This is so much better than that trip to Sausalito you had planned. I mean,
right.
You
know, who needs Northern California?
That's right. Hey. Tell us a little bit about your background. You are a professional, and one of the very few that's actually making something approaching a living in the business. How did you get into it, and what sort of work have you done?
Well, I got into it in 7th grade when a really nice teacher who I liked a lot said, "We're having play auditions. Why don't you come?" I said, "Well, what's that? What's the play?" And they called If Boys Wore Skirts. Kind of a futuristic sort of thing. This was junior high. So anyway,
sounds way ahead of its time.
Yeah, it was very, very, very experimental theater for Iowa. Anyway, so that's, I guess, when I got hooked, or when I got the bug, and I just have been doing plays ever since. Then, you know, did a lot of school stuff, a lot of community theater. Then I branched into doing apprenticeships at like local professional theaters, of which there were only one. So that was the short start of it. And went to college, ended up moving to New York, getting my Actors Equity card there in New York. Didn't go back to college. Stayed in New York, and then started auditioning and doing regional theater. So I was based in New York for about 5 years, and then moved to Los Angeles. And since I've lived in Los Angeles, I've been doing mostly commercials. So my work for like the last 4 years could be summed up on about 3 minutes of videotape. So.
What is your character like in this production of Helter Shelter?
You be quiet over there. Her name is Yvonne. She is a woman who probably shouldn't be in a shelter because she has got some money. And she's, okay, well, I'll say it. She's crazy. She's a very selfish person. She's annoying, I guess, basically, is her basic motivation and trait. And that's what a lot of people have been saying to me after the show. Like audience members, I get these great comments. "Boy, were you annoying. Boy, you just really drove me crazy. God, I'd like to," you know? And I said, well, thank you very much.
It's a great compliment. You reached them.
Yeah, they fell for it. So, yeah, I guess my character, I mean, I could go all into my character history and what I've made up about myself, but she's really a woman who's got some mental problems, but she's not poor and she's not a street person. She's a person who's probably only been on her own for the last, 5 hours. And so rather than checking into a hotel and using all her credit cards, she somehow comes to this shelter, and she's there for, what do we see her, a couple of nights, and then she disappears. And who knows?
In terms of the production, what was it like working with this group of actors and actresses?
Very impressive. Very impressive.
What were the strengths of the cast, do you think?
Well, we're mostly dames here, and so we've been, working on some female empowering stuff, and the men in the cast too. I mean, I want to include everybody when I say I'm really impressed with everyone's level of talent, and I don't want to qualify that by saying in Flint. I would say in general, everybody has really, I mean, I haven't found much difference working in this production than working in a production of entirely equity people. Mm-hmm. Other than that I've been sort of more involved on the other side of the stage, handling, producing kinds of things. Mm-hmm. That's sort of come along with it. But as far as acting and the stage work, it's been great. I mean, it's really... The thrilling thing is that this is a brand new show, mm-hmm. and we're all getting to do all of these parts for the first time. And we're all creating these characters, and we're breathing so much life into this play that I hope it sticks and that it goes on.
Kathy Johnson is one of the other actresses in this production, one of the local people from Flint who's working in the production. Kathy, in last week's show, you didn't really have a chance much to talk about your character. You want to tell us a little bit more about her?
Sure. I play the character Rose, and she is a very inside person who is very powerful in her own right, but she doesn't really know it. But with the help of Virginia, who is played by Cheryl Giannini, through the counseling, she's able to work through some of the things that she thought were problems, and she's able to go back because she's one of the ones who leaves. But she was more concerned about the other women in the shelter because they've all gone crazy, and she was wondering if she was going to go crazy too. But the reassurance of Virginia letting her know that if you were going to go crazy, you would have. And through other sessions the same night with Cheryl, she works through a lot of her own dilemmas that really weren't dilemmas, that a lot of women, when they become homeless or abused, that they have the power to leave and really don't know it. And one of the things that Rose says is that she was scared. And many women in abused situations are scared. For one reason or another. They may not know why they're scared. They're just scared to leave, either from the man's threatening or thinking she can't make it on her own or whatever the circumstance might be. But Rose does leave, and she has children that she has to go and get, and she goes to get them. Plus she has a fight with the intruder. And
the male intruder, right?
Yes, and she tries to kill him because she's so angry. She has so much anger built up in her that she does try to kill this man. Mm-hmm. And there's a baby in the shelter who really triggers a thought in her that releases this man from her death grip. Mm-hmm. And she lets him go. But she's also the protector of Virginia in the production also, because every time Virginia hollers, here comes Rose. Mm-hmm. And she does leave. And so it lets the audience know that some of them can function outside of the shelter with a little help.
Before I move on to another cast member, Kathy Johnson, I wanted to give you a chance to mention a production that you're staging at McCree Theater that's coming up in the next few months.
No, we're not staging a production. We have a traveling production of 5 young ladies who are teenagers in the Flint school system. And they worked together with me and helped to write and develop and research the script material that they are doing. So it's basically them doing the writing and me putting it into some type of content. And we've been traveling throughout the school system and the churches in the city of Flint to also enlighten about the problems that gangs and drugs are having, not only on families but on the community as a whole. And they do a very, very fine job of it. And we'll be doing it again July 27th and 28th at the University of Michigan.
What's the show called?
It's called One Way In, No Way Out. And one of the characters in this particular production also gets killed. And it's one of the finest students in the group. And that particular student does get killed by a senseless drive-by shooting. And the teachers are readily appalled by it because he was an all-A student. But one of the other teachers resolved by saying, well, if he was that smart, he shouldn't have got involved in it in the first place. And these 5 young ladies play a gamut of roles. They play the male gang members, the female gang members, the parents, the teachers, and I don't believe there's any other ones, but I might be missing one.
But they play the whole cast, right?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they play the whole thing.
That's One Way In, No Way Out?
Right.
Okay, and we'll be looking for that around Flint in the next few months. Joe Mishler, Joseph Mishler. You had a few ideas last week that you didn't have a chance to talk through. Talking about the whole idea of the production of Helter Shelter. What do you draw from your participation in this show?
Well, first, for me, it's kind of unique to work with all women. I find it very fascinating. I agree with Mary. The level of skill and the professionalism displayed on the stage is excellent. And what I really like is everybody helping everybody behind stage, on stage. I like the fact that we come before the show and we have to help set up, and then after the show we have to tear down. About the play itself, it really, for me, is kind of a real awareness, and I hope that for a lot of the men in the audience, that it's a real awareness of this, of the problem with battered women, the problem with homeless people. Those problems are really serious problems, and they're not easily solved, and they're very complex. I know it's real easy maybe not to think about those things, but this play has brought it, for me, it just brought it directly in front of me. Like I said on the last show, when I first read the script, I got angry. And when I first couple rehearsals, I'd come here and I'd listen to part of the script, and I'd leave here and I'd be really angry. Geez, how can people be treated like this? And what are we going to do to help them? So as far as the play, it's really an awareness that this problem exists. It's not a very easy problem. The other thing that I've become more aware of is the fact that when Betty Chappell worked in this clinic, there were very few solutions or alternatives for women. There were very few places they could go to. The government, for the most part, really doesn't want to deal with the problem. Local authorities don't want to deal with the problem. The police, for the most part, don't want to deal with the problem. So the solutions and the alternatives are very limited. And that is one thing that maybe through this play, we can create a wider awareness and maybe create more alternatives and more solutions for these people.
When you think about your own life and what things you can do, most of us go through life without being confronted by as much drama as this play portrays. But one of the things that always strikes me is in your daily conversation, how you can be aware of language, how you use language, and how other people around you use language, and the sort of jokes or comments that may be meant lighthearted, yet carry the threat of violence and the acceptance of violence. And I think that one of the things that men can do in their conversation and involvement with other men is to be aware of that language and what they say means, and not to let things like that just go by without recognition. I want to talk to some of the other people. That sort of maybe takes us to Teen Lowe, who had talked about some of the possible solutions with this program. I know a lot of the conversation has focused on the fact that it is a production where most of the main roles are portrayed by women. But Teen, you were saying you didn't think that necessarily this is a show whose significance is limited to women.
Definitely. It's based on the breakdown of the American family and a lot of facets of our society. And we're just focusing in on part of the visible issue. It's really, I think, from working in social services for 20 years, I see a trend for us to be dealing with self-defeated people. All people, male, female, children, every race, even businesses, when you start thinking organizationally. And with that, there's a real lack of self-esteem and a real feeling of no empowerment. And when you feel that way, you tend to overpower others. And they're usually whoever you think is weakest at the moment. So women do become victims, children do become victims, but the males are just as much a victim, and the businesses are a victim. And this show talks about not band-aiding the problem, or do we band-aid the problem? And I think we have been band-aiding the problem because we haven't been empowering our politicians. Our politicians feel a big pressure from us to put a Band-Aid on so that they can have a healed scar by the time their term is up so that they'll be reelected. And this is not a time for a simple solution. We've waited too long to do a lot of preventative things that would take 18 years to be able to prove their value, etc. And we're too much stuck on the quick fix. I think besides empowering ourselves, as our main character does in the play, we also need to, as citizens, empower our legislators. It's okay if we don't see something in 4 years. Let's just measure progress, you know.
Do you see that because the play does not have a simple solution, doesn't propose a simple solution, do you see one of the dilemmas then is our own lack of patience, that we want to see this problem solved tomorrow, and we'll follow a solution even though it's not going to solve the problem, but we follow the promise instead of saying, you know, this is a long-term problem. It's going to take us 30, 40 years for this thing to iron itself out of the system.
Right. That's part of it. I think another part is that we don't realize, when you talk about, we don't realize how guilty we feel. When you're around a handicapper or someone who's less fortunate than you, that there's issues of guilt that come in that get in the way as well. We either get avoidance because that's easier, or we get intolerance because that's different. When we can get around some of that, I think a lot of mistakes are being made in social services by, say, you or I coming in trying to fix what's going on with a pregnant teen. Let's decide what's best for her. Pregnant teens know what they need. Homeless people know what they need in order to change things. You know, abused women know what needs to be different. We need to communicate with those people and get them as part of the solution, the major part.
Susan Fosty, you didn't have a chance last week to discuss your role a lot. Do you see some of what Teen is talking about in your character?
Yes, I definitely do, and maybe that's why it wasn't until this week that we talk about Esther. I think what Esther does, Esther is known to be schizophrenic before she enters the set. And she's labeled, she is not given what the care she needs, and she's treated like schizophrenic. So that the social worker, the night social worker, is always leading her to a chair, taking her cigarette, and it was a very unsatisfying experience, not to be with the cast, but to be Esther was to feel labeled before there was an opportunity to prove myself, and the character does then end up indeed, she has a real lawyer, and she is going to leave there as soon as the money gets transferred. But there was this labeling, I think, that brings up what Teen is saying about the system. And I have done social work in the past in the Detroit area, and for me it was certainly the same experience as Teen is saying, that I think in some ways what the playwright has done is exhibit just how poor, or what the state of the art of caring for others is to tell them what they need rather than to enable them.
Do you see that, though, beyond our institutional dysfunction? Do you see that in each of us? You know, as parents, spouses, citizens, co-workers, we don't handle each other all that well sometimes.
No, that's very true. I'm also a transactional analyst without a practice, as I chose to travel with my husband around the globe instead. But in our training, we saw that, and we learned how deeply that's true, that we are not treating each other with the respect and okayness that makes our society work. And I think a lot of things have contributed to that, not just people themselves. And the automobiles took us off the streets. The downtowns are empty. And yet this is a wonderful, vital city that this transplanted Detroiter never thought I would ever say. Because actually, truthfully, I never heard a good thing about Flint. Never once. And I came up here and was blown away with what you've heard last week about the culture, the art, and most especially the people. And I think that this play is like a beginning of people getting together, sharing versus having their own little cliques, things like that. I'm really happy to live in Flint, and I do like it, and I don't have to spend my life in the car getting around Detroit anymore, and I love my hometown too.
Mary Murphy, you've been through this play now. What have you drawn from this experience?
Oh. That, you know, what they've been saying about the how do I want to put this? That, like what Teen said, that the homeless, they know what they need, you know, and I'm thinking to myself, people think it couldn't happen to them, you know, that they would never be homeless. And I'm sure that's what the homeless thought, that they would never be homeless. And I think, you know, this play brings out, and I hope it brings out, that, you know, it could happen to you. Don't think it couldn't. And, you know, that's what I keep thinking about it.
Yeah.
It could happen to anybody.
Julie Petrus, did you have something you wanted to add to that?
I was just going to, actually, a direct contrast to what Mary just said. I think the frightening part of seeing homeless people, for me, as well as seeing abused women, is, my God, that could happen to me.
Right.
And how far am I from being homeless, or how far am I from being abused or being a victim? And especially in this cast, so many of the homeless people that are portrayed in this play are fairly middle class, intelligent, educated, could very well have lived a normal life had circumstances been different. And I think that's the frightening part of it for me, is that just by the grace of God, I'm not on the street, or I'm not abused.
We're going to go to a message break in just a minute, but Julie, do you sometimes have a sense that these people, is there a reason these people lost control of their lives? Because it seems this is very much an issue of control. These are people that often were controlled, that could not see alternatives. I've spoken with people before who just, you know, I would say, well, why don't you go? Why don't you just get up and go? And they say, well, I have no place to go. And, you know, I would say, well, but because for me, the concept of walking out the door is not that incomprehensible. You know, if I've got nothing but a pair of shoes, well, at least I got a pair of shoes. But then my life has given me maybe a sense of freedom and control that other people's lives haven't.
So do I...
The whole business of do you have any sense of why some people Because all of us have
this
seen people
lifestyle.
who had rough situations and
Right.
they just toughed it. They
Got out
broke
of it.
out or took it over or did whatever. And other people that didn't. They were broken by it.
I think in this cast, and I'm actually the exception to this rule as far as my character is concerned, because I think my character made a conscious decision to stop with her good life that she had as a professional cellist, could not handle it, and made a conscious decision to give up that life. I don't think that's the way with the majority of people, and actually what is portrayed is that majority of the people in the shelter in this play have been abused or seen abuse in their life, and it's become a contagion effect and has affected them as it affected their parents and will affect their children, and on and on. There's no solution given. How do we stop this? What generation finally says, no, I'm not buying into this problem and I'm going to succeed? But that's what a lot of I don't know that people do make necessarily a conscious decision. I think they find themselves in the situation and have not been given the social opportunities and the social graces and education to get out. Don't know where to turn or how to
We've
rise.
got to go for a message, although Kathy, if you've got a quick comment.
Well, you had mentioned something about control. The character I played was the head of a collection department, and she had to leave because she had lived with her stepfather for 17 years and had 4 kids by him. So I don't know if it's a matter of control. She had a very good job. You know, after a while, you know, how much of this do you take before you do leave? You understand? So I don't know if it's a matter of losing control of your immediate environment, because her caseworker at the shelter suggested she leave the state to go to another state to get out of that environment totally. You know, because sometimes you have to be totally removed in order to reflect and see and know where you're going. And that's with my particular character. So I don't know if it's a loss of control or not, you know.
When we come back, we're going to go to the back row. So, Mary O'Sullivan, do you have any last comment you want to add before we break for a commercial? Don't mean to put you on the spot. Just when we come back, we're going back to
Let me think about it.
Okay, we'll come back. We'll come back in just a minute and carry this discussion on.
There are many ways people get high. When you're high, your judgment is faulty. You could take risks with sex, and AIDS could be an uninvited partner. Using drugs can destroy your body and your mind. Don't let drugs put you at risk for AIDS. Find out more about how drug use and AIDS are related. Call 1-800-342-AIDS.
Hello, sports fans. On behalf of the Comcast Cable Sports Team, I'd like to invite you to join us on Channel 17, Monday and Wednesday nights at 8:30 p.m. for the Points on the Board show, and at 9 p.m. for the Game of the Week.
I was going to take an engineering job in New York. I got a better offer. I joined the Peace Corps. The way I look at it, the world can wait 2 years for another smoked glass high-rise.
Peace Corps, the toughest job you'll ever love.
Welcome back to Hometown Magazine. This is Michael Kelly, and we're on the stage of the production of Helter Shelter, which is taking place in the Buckham Fine Arts Gallery in downtown Flint. And we're talking with David Combs, who is the stage manager of this production. David, you've been a professional for a number of years. You were in The Accidental Tourist, one of my favorite movies, so there you go. Why did you come to Flint?
Well, I got an invitation from Cheryl Giannini, who was a very close friend of mine who I went to school with in Wayne State University in Detroit, Michigan. And she said that she was working on a fabulous project and would my wife and I like to be involved. And I respect Cheryl so much that I said, yes, I would love to. It would be, I would like to do theater because it is my very first love. I find it's far more fulfilling than doing movies or television.
When you came to Flint, obviously you were coming for no money, so I assume your expense account was pretty lean too.
Yeah.
How did the care and feeding of the professionals who came in, how did you get taken care of?
Well, when we arrived, certain things had changed. We had we're going to be on a contract, a small theaters contract, and we were going to be at the Buckham Alley Theater. But through some complications, we were no longer at the theater. And what happened was that my wife and myself and Cheryl Giannini became the producers of the play. So all arrangements that had been made before were now off. And so what we had to do was just kind of hope that the play was successful enough that we could get some of our expenses back. And so far we've managed to pay for our transportation, so that's really pretty good. Okay. But I mean, you know, sometimes you give things up to do wonderful things, and that's...
Well, what is entailed in producing a play?
Well, in this case, because we are in an art gallery as opposed to a theater, we had to turn the art gallery into a theater, which means that we had to create a set, we had to put in lights, we had to put in sound, we had to put in risers because you can't seat everybody on the floor, they won't be able to see. We had to create a theater. And we had to create it from everything around the community, and the community of Flint is so incredibly giving and wonderful that it was not the impossible task that it could have been. We had a very short time period to do it in, and everybody just pretty much said yes, and that was wonderful.
How long were you here in town?
We got here and the play opened 2.5 weeks after we arrived.
And did you have to do the set design and all of that after you arrived, or did you have some lead time to work on it?
No. No, I got here and I found out that we were no longer in the theater, so we were in the gallery. So I came over one night with the director and designed the set. And then just kept working. Just said, okay, what do we need? Okay, we have to have a back wall, and it has to be black, and we have to have lights, and we have to get that, and you just keep going and solve problems. That's basically the stage manager's job.
Now, the stage manager, I've stage managed a lot. That's about all I can do these days because now I have kids, and I sort of come in at the last minute and stage manage. But when you're also producing, I mean, it's interesting to play the different roles because you sort of set it up coming in, and then I mean, you have to fly the plane once it takes off. What was it like stage managing in this space?
Well, it was very interesting. You talk to yourself a lot. As the producer, you're talking to yourself as a stage manager, and the stage manager talks to the producer. So people were beginning to think that perhaps I should have been on the stage as one of the crazier people. But I sit in the back there, and I run both the sound and the lights at the same time. So it's like... You've got your hands out, and in case you need your nose to push a button, you've got that going too. It's quite thrilling every night. There's something new and different going on.
Well, it saves you calling cues because you're right there.
It certainly does. I was talking to myself again. Okay, Dave, turn the lights up. Okay. Okay, Dave, turn on the sound. Okay. So I just say it in my mind.
Did you ever have a bad argument with yourself over a stage decision?
Several times. That's when I started getting worried.
As the producer, have you an interest now in the development of the play as it goes forward?
Yes, I'm very interested in it. But I mean, my producing ends this evening when this play closes. There has been a tremendous amount of interest in the play. I know that there's been even a couple of television people from New York have called up wanting scripts to the play, and the Actors Theater of Louisville has called up wanting a script. And Susanna Holm mentioned that the group of churches, the Council of Churches, would like to see this play tour, and I would love to see this play tour. I think the timing of this play is perfect. It is an issue that is very much in people's minds. It's in the forefront of the public, and it should go out so that people can see what it is actually like, because if people aren't confronted with things, then they just let them go. But if they're on the street, I mean, one of the most wonderful experiences I've had in this play is when I was sitting back there running the cues one night, and a homeless man walked in off the street in the opening of the play. And he was standing in the back watching the play, and he was kind of talking a little bit and moving a little bit along with it, you know, and he was just beginning to disturb the people. And I went and I got a chair and I put it next to me, and I went and I got him. And I brought him back and I set him next to me. And we sat there together watching the play, and he watched the whole thing, and he applauded at the end, and he loved it. And he came back 3 or 4 more times. And that was extraordinary to me. Because for that time, he was part of this production.
It's interesting about the location, too, in the downtown.
Yes.
We're going to break for a message in just a minute, but before we do, David, I wanted to ask you if, having seen the production and the development of the script and the production as well, dealing with the social issue side of it, the play doesn't clearly point to an answer. It's not propaganda. It's presenting life. Do you draw a possible answer or a possible direction from your involvement with the play?
I feel basically that it is centered in families. It's the heart of this country, and it's what's somehow is going out of this country. It's the family is the nucleus, and what we see in this shelter are broken families. People from families that something has gone wrong in the family. And to me, there must be some way, and I don't know if it is churches or if it's religion or what it is exactly. Certainly it's not government, but government can help. There's some things that government can do. They can support the family as opposed to supporting a war. And I think that is what the answer is starting back to the basics, is the family unit, and creating and supporting families, and making life be about the joy of living, and not the joy of money or the joy of destruction or the joy of being superior over someone.
That sort of connects with what Tina was saying earlier about the solution isn't going to come because a bill is passed or something happened down in Washington or Lansing quickly. It's going to take that daily
it's going to
bit
take
by bit.
Work for years. From a lot of people, it's going to take a concentrated effort. It's not, a politician is not going to run on a platform of doing it and do it. That's simply not going to happen.
Politicians can facilitate the trend, but in essence we're talking a long-term trend.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, well, we'll be back to talk more with the cast of Helter Shelter in just a minute.
Doing drugs is like being on top of the world. Everyone says so. Everyone seems to be having one dandy old time. Hey, it's part of growing up. Or is it? Just think about this. Before you go and do something you've never done before, you just better know what you're jumping into.
Goodwill trains people with disabilities, counsels them, helps them to find a job, and hold it. If you're disabled and you want job training, or if your business needs a reliable source of skilled, motivated employees, contact your nearest Goodwill office.
I sang this song when I played Annie in the Broadway musical. I'm Shelley Bruce. I can still believe in tomorrow for myself and my baby, because I've won my battle against cancer.
Shelley is with us today thanks to medical advances of the past. We need to make research a priority if more people are to be saved today and tomorrow. You can help. Call me at Research America.
Be prepared. What's your last name? Michael. We are back here at Buckham Fine Arts Gallery with the cast of Helter Shelter, which is a production, an original production by Flint playwright Betty Chappell. We're talking with Suzanne Holmes, who plays one of the parts in the play. Suzanne, you've been listening to the discussion over this program and the last program. What do you draw from all of these things that people are saying?
Well, a lot. As some of us were just saying on the break, it's been wonderful to have an opportunity to hear everyone's individual point of view. I'm not a trained therapist or a counselor or a social worker, and so I imagine what I might say here might be in contradiction with something that someone else has had to say. But I think that one of the answers here is realizing the humanity in each of us, realizing our own humanity and the humanity of other people. And I think that you can give people things that satisfy their physical needs, but people need more than material goods to live. They need to have their emotional needs met. And I think that part of the answer is in our being able to reach out to one another and affirm what is good in each one of us. And I think that in the play, the journey of the main character, Virginia, is just one of realizing no matter how much she wants to help other people, that you also have to draw a line between what you're giving to other people and what you need to give to yourself. I think the struggle for all of us is to balance in our own lives what we provide for ourselves and what we provide for other people. And so in that respect, the play raises an interesting question. And I also don't know whether I'm in total contradiction with what Teen had to say about people knowing the answers or not, because I think if we dialogued a little more on that, we probably would be on the same side of the fence. But I think often in my own life, when I'm having a problem, I know I have a problem, but the reason I have the problem is because I haven't found the solution yet. Mm-hmm. And sometimes it takes talking to other people or talking to myself for a long period of time to arrive at the point where I realize what my options are. And so I suspect that of some of these women who come to the shelter, some of them know what they need. Some of them need help realizing what their options are. And that's where I think the people who are in the social services in this country are providing a great service to all of us, because there's probably not a one of us at some point in our life who hasn't needed someone to listen to us from an objective point of view and help us sort out the complexities of our life so that we can go ahead and be empowered once again.
Richard Mock, Suzanne has taken a very personal view of this. Do you think there is maybe a more practical or political aspect to this problem as well?
Well, the question last week was about what kind of societal fixes there might be. And I think if we look at the changes in the distribution of wealth in America over the last 10 years, the finger points rather strongly at what has happened and along the political spectrum that has impacted homelessness as we see it today and the powerlessness. When someone becomes homeless, they drop into some sort of black hole, and it must be absolutely terrifying. And do they ever come out of that black hole? Can they ever get out of that black hole? They have an impoverished, at that point, they are impoverished in terms of their political impact. Many people, I believe, would like to sweep that under the rug, and it's probably one of the easiest things to sweep under the rug because of the ability of all of us to defend against seeing things that we don't want to see. So I feel that there's a very, very strong, and this is in contradistinction to what many others have said today, I feel that there's a very, very strong political component here that has been not addressed and is very systematically avoided by at the network levels and beyond, with most of the media that is part of the power structure in the United States. It's simply being avoided altogether, and we're headed very rapidly to some painful times ahead in America as a whole.
But there's the problem of unforeseen consequences, and I think much of what we're dealing here are the unforeseen consequences of what were seen once as very progressive reforms. Changes in laws relating to divorce, changes in laws relating to institutionalizing the mentally ill, obviously economic changes as the huge market for highly paid unskilled labor has disappeared, and there once were many good jobs for unskilled people in this country, and they are rapidly disappearing. And nowhere is that more evident than here in the city of Flint, where I can remember when I was in school, there was a general sense that, oh, you didn't have to work. You could always get a job in the shop, you know. You didn't have to, study. You didn't have to get good grades, because you could always get a job in the shop. And if you were in the shop, you'd be making, well, today the equivalent of something around $40,000 to $50,000 a year, and a lot more with overtime and benefits. You know, I mean, it was good. It was a good job for an unskilled labor, and yet here we are in a situation where we're dealing with consequences that nobody anticipated would happen.
We spoke about why is it that some people rise out of the ashes and make something of their world after they've been struck down in this very powerful way, and why some others don't. My response to that, in response to what you've just said, is that in this area, there's two profoundly negative impacts on being independent. One has been the social service kind of notion, which has gone beyond just protection and has missed the boat in some levels, and I want to address that because it's pretty apparent what that's about. But the other issue that is not addressed, and I've seen again and again in my 10 years in this city, is that we have had such a centralized power of who has employed most of the workers here that dependency has very wonderfully been orchestrated over the years to keep people dependent on the company and not independent to their own resources. What has happened as a result is when they find themselves out in the street, and I've worked with these people again and again, they believe somebody will come and save them. They have no personal resources. Many of them have been the third generation that has worked for the company. And so they are the people that drop right out of sight.
And you think it's like we talk about welfare dependency, people who have been on welfare for generations. Do you think somebody whose family maybe was employed by the corporation and came to look at that as more or less of a given? I think one of our recent guests was Ben Hamper on this show, and Ben talks about that, how he just grew up in his family assuming, of course, he was going to go to work in the plant, and you didn't have to do anything, you just got in. And what a disruption that was. Now, Ben happens to be a very gifted person and has done very well as a writer, but at the same time, one could say even Ben isn't employed properly or something, but do you think that there's that same sort of dependency that some people talk about a welfare dependency? There is actually a sort of corporate dependency in places like Flint and maybe the Detroit area that have been so focused.
That's what I was saying. There is absolutely no question about it, and it's quite an insidious thing. And it's most of all, it's insidious because there's such a sense over the years, an awareness that has come to me that there's some sort of an orchestration that if you keep people dependent, they cannot leave those kinds of menial labor and unskilled jobs. And there are a lot of very, very unhappy people that were until a few years ago, that were making a lot of money. And the money and benefits were holding them in jobs in which they were enormously, personally and spiritually under-realized. So there was a lot of dissatisfaction. One of the things that's dropping out is as that company moves away from this area, that the diversity is going to increase, and that's going to inure us against the difficulties that might be ahead in this country as a whole. So again, I say this: we are not behind the 8 ball in Flint, Michigan. We're ahead of the 8 ball, and we have been compelled to go there. And because we see all these gifted people, not only here, but out on the streets as well, making a life for themselves in the middle of the shambles that we see around us.
That's a very interesting perspective, and I think very useful. Tony Graham, who played one of the other parts in the production. Tony, what has this meant to you, this involvement with the play Helter Shelter?
Well, it's been a wonderful experience, and I believe that it's really been a help to our whole community. I mean, I think that to help the situation, as everyone has been speaking about, as far as the homeless and the unemployed, is to bring it to surface so that people can see it and visualize it. I think one of the main attractions of our play is that people realize that it is basically true. It's based right here in Flint. The characters are real, and we can relate to them. And I think too that the family has broken down. I think also that, as Richard said, that we have the General Motors thing where everyone was so dependent. I don't come from Flint. I've only been here about 5 years, but I can see that Flint is in a great transition, and it's just onward and upward. You know, it's doing very well, and especially in the inner city here, it just bubbles here. People are working hard to make their lives better here. And that's why this play is so important, because all of us have worked together. We've had a wonderful time. I think I can speak for everyone working on this play, and just a good feeling, you know, and a sense of energy. And we know we're doing a good thing. And I think that the more that people can see about real life, the easier it is for them to speculate on how to help it. My 10-year-old son saw the play, and a lot of the people have talked, that have children that I know, have talked about whether their children should see this play or not. And I asked my son after he saw it, I said, Chris, I said, you know, people have said, well, maybe they didn't think that their children should see the play because of some of the language and whatnot that goes on in it. And he says, oh, no, Mom. He says, I think it's really good. He says, it makes you see things so that you see that these things are real. And then when you get bigger, it won't be so hard for you. You'll be able to understand it better. And I thought that was a very good perspective for him. And I really don't think that the play is too harsh for children. I think they see pretty much, or not, if not more, violence and that of that nature on the TV already.
I think the language thing is interesting, because I'm very careful with the language that I let my children have in their household vocabulary, but I have no illusions that they haven't heard those words before. And I would not send somebody, or not say you can't see a program because it's got this or that word in it, because they've heard those words. They're on the playground, and you want to tell them, you know, to use those words in the wrong context is going to mark you in a way that maybe you don't want to be thought. But still, they're not living in a vacuum. They have heard those words before. Henry Bates Jr., we haven't had a chance to talk to you yet today. How long have you been in Flint? Are you a Flint native?
I've been here since I was 2 years old.
Okay, that counts. That counts. What kind of changes have you seen in your time here?
Well, I guess it's different, you know. One time says things are running pretty smoothly, and other times things are real, like, up and down. And right now it's really a rough time, I guess, for everyone, you know. And I really don't know when the change is going to come to make things a little bit better than what it is. But it seems to be it has heading into the right direction as far as making things a little bit better for everyone.
Do you think the answer is sort of has come out of our discussions today, that the answer lies within people? I mean, that's our resource. So often, sometimes it seems as though people look at people as a problem. Boy, if we could only get rid of these people, then things would be better. But actually, that's the resource. That's where the solution's going to come, from that imagination and that muscle and that willingness to go out and do something.
I think that's the answer to the whole problem. If people can act upon what they really feel about certain things, instead of, I guess, sitting back and hesitating on them, a lot of problems would be solved. Mm-hmm. But by hesitating on certain problems, it just make that problem worse than what it is. Yeah. And then you have to start all over again. And that's really a waste of time. And we really don't have that much time here on Earth to waste time. And I really think that you should utilize the time that you have in a positive way to bring upon a positive manner.
David Combs, you've been in town for a few weeks now. What's your impression of Flint?
I love Flint. My impression comes from the people of Flint, and they have my respect, my admiration, and my love. I think they're great people. And I think that's what makes a town, not a company and not vacant buildings. It's the people in it. And I don't care what the town looks like. The people have the heart as big as all outdoors.
You know, one of the things that's amazed me about this town, and maybe why we have not gone anywhere for a while, every time they want to hire somebody for a leadership role in this town, they go out of town. I don't know if how many of you have noticed that, but the foundations and the city government and everybody goes, they figure, let's get some expert and fly them in from San Francisco or Colorado instead of hiring our own people. Yeah, and those people stay here. Yeah, well, now that's one thing. But I'm talking about the people who are going to develop the community. We have had, I mean, that is why we have these $30 million white elephants down the block that nobody goes to, because people came in, they were here for 5 years. They did something that looked good on their resume, and they got a job someplace else. And the strength of this city is its people, and I think it's wonderful when people come in from out of town and want to be part of the community, want to work. That's wonderful. But our strength is here, the solution is here, and we ought to quit hiring out-of-town experts to do it for us and do it here. Okay, we're drawing to a close. We've only got a few more minutes. Jeb, why don't you stand up? Just at least stand up. Jeb's been part of the production. He's been our microphone man. Where's the camera? Which camera is on? That one over there? This one. Okay. Jeb, are you from Flint or are you from out of town?
From Flint.
Okay. How did you get involved with this crowd?
Well, my mom was in it, and then she came home one day and said they needed some help, so I just came in, and I just got involved.
Have you ever done theater before?
Yeah, I was in Flint Youth Theater a couple years.
You going to do it again?
Yeah.
All right. How old are you?
14.
Well, see, Jeb is the same age as Drew Hahn, who's our director, running the show. So we have two of these theatrical forces at work. Hey. Oh, 15. Excuse me, Drew. I'm sorry. But who knows? Start young. That's what it's all about. I think Mary was saying, what, 7th grade or 7 years old? So, good luck to you.
Thanks.
All right. You get the microphone back, though. As we're rolling to a close, does anyone have any thoughts they want to share? Anything that people haven't had a chance to say? Yeah, Mary.
Well, one of the really pleasant surprises about this whole show has been the audience. You know, we didn't really know what we were going to come up with, and before I got to Flint, or a few days after I got here and I didn't know my way around, I was saying, gee, a play about homelessness in Flint in the summer. I mean, that doesn't sound like a real promising idea. I thought maybe people here had just had enough of it, you know, because it's in your own backyard. Maybe you don't want to go see it on stage. But we have all been just really surprised and knocked out by the attendance we've gotten. Tonight we're sold out, and it's going to be standing room only. It's going to be hot as hell in here tonight. But we're going to have a big house tonight, and that shows that people in Flint are interested in this subject, and they're interested in supporting their local artists, and they're interested in theater. And let that continue on. After this play closes tonight, let all the people who have come to this show, maybe for the first time ever seeing a play, come back to the theater and keep supporting that. And you know, I've heard nothing but real good comments from the audience. Maybe they're just saying that to me in person, but people have been really, really surprised and entertained. Even though it's a tough subject and it's got its tragic moments, but I think on the whole, people want to see theater, and they've proved that, and we've been very happy that they've come.
This town has produced some wonderful theater. There have been some great moments, and I'm sure that many of you here tonight will be part of great moments in the future. This is Michael Kelly, and it is time for us to bring Hometown Magazine to a close again. I want to thank very much everyone here who is in the cast and crew of Helter Shelter, which was written by Flint playwright Betty Chappell. This is the world premiere production here, and this is the original cast, and maybe someday your names will all be in some theatrical history book as the people who created characters. So on behalf of everybody with the Hometown Magazine group, thank you for your time.